What's up everybody, Old Man Winter 8. In this video, we're gonna dive into a topic I've been seeing a lot of in the discussions. The Jones Mercury Phase does not have the Skatetech baseplate. And first off, I do wanna thank Jones for sending me a set of the Mercuries and a set of the Mercury Phases so I could actually do this video and really kind of compare them to not only see the differences, but most importantly to see the similarities. Now, before I go any further in the video, I'm not here to try to convince you that this Fusion XR baseplate on the Jones Mercury Phase or even on the Thirtytwo binding is the same as Skatetech. I'm not here to tell you that it's better than Skatetech. I'm here to just show you the similarities and where you can actually see the inspiration and you can see why a lot of people are gonna love this binding. So first off, one thing to people that don't know what Skatetech is, this was designed by JF Pelsha and it was a design that he kind of came up with some inspiration from a skateboard truck. We have a hanger, we have a kingpin, we have bushings, and basically what it is, if you look at the bottom of this binding, the only parts of this binding that actually touch the board are this hanger, which is this piece in the middle, and then the bushings on the four corners of the binding. And then this hanger is actually attached to the base plate at a pivot point. So right in the middle, you can actually see that this hanger does pivot back and forth. Now these bushings on all four corners, those are basically there to help, one, make the binding sit a little more flush on the board, but two, when you have a binding that's a little bit stiffer and a little bit quicker from edge to edge, they're there to actually help smooth it out. So you do get a fast reaction, but you're also getting a smooth reaction from edge to edge. Essentially, when you have this thing mounted on the board, everything sits flat, but as you lean onto your heel side edge, you're kind of smushing those bushings down on that heel side edge, and you're really pulling that binding up from the middle of the binding, from right underneath your discs. Then as you're transferring from your heel side edge to your toe side edge, as soon as that binding hits and all four of those bushings go flat, now we're instantly pivoting up onto the toe side edge, and those bushings basically hit. And then as you're transferring energy, they smush a little bit on the toe side. And this basically, again, helps for that nice, easy transfer from your toe side edge to your heel side edge. And then another really cool thing about this is that when we look at the bottom of this base plate, we actually take out the bushings, we take out basically everything that's not the core of the base plate. We only actually have this small part of this ring going around the outside and this hanger that's actually touching the board. And it is made out of a material that does have a little bit of flex to it. So we're getting a little less footprint on the board. And as the board flexes, those bushings, again, they're a little bit softer. So just like the foam or the rubber or anything they put on the bottom of any binding, it's gonna help that board flex around your binding, so you're gonna get less of a dead spot underneath your foot. So now as we move this aside and we move over to the Fusion XR base plate on the bottom of the Jones, one thing that people don't realize is this is actually made up of four parts. We have the base plate, we also have this bushing system, which is made out of a little bit more flexy polymer material. We have the foam pad on the bottom, and then we have the footbed on top. Now I'm actually gonna switch over to this Thirtytwo binding, which I have got actually taken apart. And one thing to note right off the bat, this piece on the bottom of the binding, while it is snapped into the bottom of this thing, it is glued as well. Do not take this apart. It is not supposed to come apart, and doing things like that to your bindings can void the warranty on your binding. So again, I can't stress it apart. Do not take this apart. I did it for you. But when we look at this whole system, when we go from the base plate of the binding to the bushing system and that foam and that footbed, footbed's pretty standard. Obviously, just like the standard footbed that's removable on the Skatetech versions, so we can really move those aside. We go to the base plate itself. If I remove this softer material from the bottom with this foam on it, and we look at the base plate of the binding, one of the crazy things about it, the actual base plate itself, this ring right around the outside of the disc, this is the only part of the binding and the base plate that's actually touching your board. Everything else is a softer material, just like we see in a lot of bindings on the market. Obviously not just with Skatetech. A lot of them do have a rubber or foam on there, giving it that little smoother feel from edge to edge, but they don't want to have to lose that quickness and that reaction time from edge to edge. So again, checking this thing out, it's pretty rad where you only have a little small part of this base plate touching the board, and you are getting a little bit better flex out of the board. And then when we go back to the base plate design on this thing, one thing that I noted on this is that obviously when we do have a very, very small part of the binding touching the board, we actually have room. If we remove all this foam, just like we removed the bushings from the SkateTech, you actually have a little bit of a rocking point. Now it does go to a little bit of a flat spot where that disc is, but you do have a rocking point on the middle of the binding. It's just spread out over a little bit bigger area compared to the SkateTech. But again, we are giving you that transfer of pressure from your heel side edge to your toe side edge, and we are making it a little bit smoother. Now, compared to a lot of other bindings on the market, one thing that is very, very unique about this is when you look at this foam underneath the binding itself, there's these little triangles at the four corners. And when you feel these things, they do stick up a little bit. They are a little bit thicker and they are a little bit more dense. And we compare it to the bushings that are on the bottom of the SkateTech bindings, that foam is almost the same thickness. But again, we are getting some enhanced points that are sticking out on the toe side and the heel side of the binding. So when you are transferring from heel side edge to toe side edge and toe side edge to heel side edge, it's basically rocking back to the middle. The disc hits and then it rocks onto the heel and pushes into those thicker pieces on the heel side edge. So there really is a mimic of the SkateTech style in this binding. And that was a thing that I didn't even realize. I had rode these for a few months before I even realized that that was actually a feature on the bottom of the binding. You can actually feel that, and it totally makes sense that, again, if you offer a little bit thicker spot in those same areas as the SkateTech bindings, you are gonna get a very, very similar ride from toe to heel, and again, with a little bit of that rocking motion. Now, when we compare the two side by side, some things that I thought were very, very interesting is that, again, we look at that hanger on the bottom of the Jones, and it's there to, again, help give you not just that flex from toe to heel and give you that performance from toe to heel, but the fact that it is so minimal does allow the board to flex a little bit more underneath your foot. But when we compare it to the Fusion XR plate, we actually have significantly less base plate touching the board. Something that does kind of make them a little bit comparable, and it's something that can offset. Yeah, this one is thinner, but this one has less real estate touching the board. So both of those are going to help the flex of your board from side to side. And then when we go back to the SkateTech thing, we're looking at that central pivot point, and as one of the key features on the SkateTech, giving you that nice, easy, smooth transfer and giving you that leverage from the middle of your binding. And then we also have those softer rubber bushings. If you do feel this material in general is a little bit softer than the foam and this kind of polymer nylon. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but you can see that it does have flex, but it's not as flexy as the rubber. But then when you look at the bindings and we go back and forth, we actually take this thing and we have no bushings underneath this. And basically the only thing that's touching right now is the base plate itself, is that hanger piece. This binding can rock forward and backward a little bit. You can actually see that rocking motion. But the crazy thing about it is that this doesn't have that centralized point, so it does have a little bit more of a dead spot there. But you can see that when we do tilt this back, it is a greater angle. Also, when we tilt it forward, it is a much greater angle than the angle of the SkateTech. So yeah, it doesn't have that central point where we're basically transferring that energy nice and smooth, easy from edge to edge, and we're not getting as much push on the front and on the back. But with this little bit stiffer material, there actually is more room for rocking potential. While it doesn't have that smooth, easy pivot point right in the middle, with your foot, how it sits in the binding, and the potential room for this thing to actually move, it does make sense that that does help this ride a little bit closer to the SkateTech binding than any other base plate that's just flat with some basic foam on the bottom of it. So as you can see, when it comes to the Fusion XR base plate on the Jones Mercury Phase and obviously on the Thirtytwo binding, it's not SkateTech. I'm not going to try to convince you that it is. And all those people who are just clamoring and freaking out because there isn't a SkateTech version, even though these things haven't even been on the market for a month yet. But one thing that I do know is that the designers of this base plate, they were in direct contact with the designer of SkateTech when they were designing this. And you can definitely tell that they took a lot of inspiration from the SkateTech to put into this binding. And then you can also understand when you see how this thing works, all those little features that you might not notice right off the bat just by looking at it. You can really understand why a lot of their team riders really do like the way that this thing feels and rides.